In the wake of the historic Helsinki summit, President Trump is seeking to normalize relations with Russia. One America's Jack Posobiec sat down with the vice president of the Center for Security Policy to discuss what's next for the two sides.
Mike Waller, Vice President of the Center for Security Policy, thank you so much for sitting down with us here today at One America News. And you're someone who's been a Russia expert for many, many years. Tell me, where do you see Trump's diplomacy, his strategy moving forward after the Helsinki summit, moving on toward more substantive issues between himself and Russia?
If you look at his national security strategy, it's definitely an America First strategy. What he did in Helsinki was more of what he does with most foreign leaders or other adversaries who he meets with but has to deal with. He butters them up, he praises them, and then he comes across with a left hook and puts them in their place if they need to be put there. So you had his enemies all worked up about him being nice to Putin and so forth. I don't think it was that way at all. I think he's got something planned to keep Putin tame, but he's got to deal with a man who's got thousands of nuclear weapons aimed at us.
Right, so looking forward in some of those hotspots, I know a big one of those is Syria, and there's been some talk lately about now Russia is actually going to be coming in with the Russian military police and actually patrolling some of the borders between Syria and Israel, hopefully to sort of take the place of the Iranian militias and Hezbollah that have been there.
Heard that, but what also is important is the Russians are talking to the Israelis, and that's the Israelis' neighborhood. So if the Russians and if the Israelis are comfortable with the Russian activities there, and the U.S. is signing off on it, it's not a sinister plot like Trump's critics are saying that Trump is handing Syria over to Putin.
No, it's
Remember, Obama did that.
Right, no, he did. No, this is clearly a brokered agreement between Trump, Netanyahu, and Putin. And we know Netanyahu has good relationships with both world leaders. And at the end of the day, isn't that what we want? We want diplomacy. We want open lines of communication.
Yeah, and Syria is not a place in our vital national interest anyway, so who really cares?
Right. Looking forward, where do you see the president going on Crimea?
I think he has to settle for the fact that the Russians are there to stay. We don't have a defense treaty with Ukraine. It's not an ally. It's not in our national interests. The Russians have had a huge military presence in Crimea for forever anyway.
Why do you suppose that so many on the left, at least domestically, are clinging to this narrative that Trump and Putin are somehow working together behind the scenes on everything?
Well, first, they need a new narrative. I think at first, if you look at the accusers. They're all leftists who were apologists for the Soviets in the first place. They were repeating all the KGB active measures, propaganda campaigns, nuclear freeze, Reagan's going to start a nuclear war. This was their theme for the 70s and 80s. And then all of a sudden, it's a lot of these same individuals are complaining about collaboration with the KGB guy leading Russia.
Meanwhile, they've been the ones who are collaborating with the Soviets and the Russians all along.
All along. And then the Hillary camp made fortunes off cutting deals with the Russians, of putting U.S. taxpayer dollars in to keep the Russian weapons plants open and the design bureaus open. Now these new weapons are coming online thanks to the bailout from the Clinton administration, and you have Hillary Clinton leading the charge of Russian collusion. It makes no sense unless there's something much more nefarious behind it, which I believe there really is.
Well, when it comes to the Clintons, as we all know, they're not so much in it for the country, they're in it for their paychecks. Mike, thanks so much for being on with us today for One America News.
Good to be with you, Jack.
Great to talk to you.
Want to see more videos like this? Click on the link below and subscribe to One America News on YouTube. And call your cable provider and kindly demand that One America News is added to your lineup. Call and subscribe today.